we have talking a lot already about the opening stage, but to summarize a bit, and we will even elaborate a bit more on the topic, I would like to mention the principle of the golden rules of the opening. And I have written it in the annotation, but how to start the game? Of course, every opening is different than the other, and you always have to be alert and take into account your opponent's move. So it's not that you can just following the scheme I'm just going to mention. You always have to be critical. What is my opponent doing? What is he intending to do next? But in general, you can follow the scheme I've mentioned here. You put a pawn in the center. We have talked about it already. We put a pawn 2 squares in order to grab some space, to increase our influence in the middle of the board. After that, we are going to develop our minor pieces, and with that I mean the knight and the bishop. So I like to develop them in the direction of the center. The knight could probably go to f3, the bishop could probably go to c4, or in certain cases it could go also to other squares. But I think this is a nice active spot for the bishop. We have already seen the scholars made, and the pawn on f7 is usually a vulnerable point in the opponent's position. And of course you need to realize that now I'm explaining things from white's perspective, but we can also mirror them and look from black's perspective. So when the f7 pawn is vulnerable, also the pawn on f2 can be considered a weak point in white's position. But let's focus on how white continues developing here. He develops the minor pieces. Then the next step is to make sure that we are going to castle. And we do that with the reason to bring our king into safety, because we have pushed 1 pawn, sometimes 2 pawns, or maybe 3 or 4 pawns even, in the middle of the board. And that means that the king has less protection. The pawns are usually offering a shelter for the king. So that's why we like to castle, bring our king into safety. King is safe when it castles, and well, in this case, I've castled in the right direction to the king side. Could also move into the left direction to the queen side. That's absolutely fine. Then, very important is to realize that after castling, your opening hasn't been completed yet. Because what you have to do still is develop the remaining pieces. So it's nice to develop one part of the board, in this case the king side, but these other pieces, they also would like to join the game. Notice that I consciously refrain from developing the queen too early. We know that it can have a huge effect. You can have a quick result when bringing out the queen. You may win, but with correct defense, the opponent will be able to neutralize the threat. So better don't bring out your most valuable piece too quickly. Instead, we are completing our development on the queen side by developing all the minor pieces. So I would like to develop the knight to c3 and then move the d pawn and make sure that the bishop will also be developed. So you get to see these sort of moves. And well, I'm making now more or less 10 moves from white's perspective, but you never know if the knight really will go to c3 or to d2. But in general, I want you to have this global picture of developing your pieces in the direction of the center. Very rarely you develop your pieces into the direction of the edge of the board. I think they have less possibilities there, but sometimes from the edge of the board you can still try to rejoin the game, entering the center via a different path. But okay, we make sure that the pawn is in the center, the minor pieces are developed, we castle, all our pieces are developed, all our minor pieces are developed, and basically there's this other very important rule of thumb. The opening is only finished when you have connected your rooks. So that means that your king is in a safe place, and the rooks are connected with each other. They're protecting each other. They're covering the back rank, and only then all your pieces are ready to join the attack. And I think when you have this schedule in your mind, you are able to follow it in basically all your games. You will never forget to play with all your pieces, and that's so important, because once again, if you bring out 1 or 2 pieces and the rest is useless, it will be much easier for the opponent to tackle your ideas. One reminder we used in Dutch actually, but well, maybe in English it doesn't make too much sense. But we had this rule which we called mora. It's the same as the golden rules, just with a slightly different meaning. Like the M of mora is standing for the middle, the O for ontwikkelen, which means development of the minor pieces. The R is for rokade, castling. And then the A, it means that you're only able to attack after completing the first couple of steps. So I always felt when I was young, when I was learning the game, I felt this was actually a very important rule of thumb. Also to do it in all these orders. Yeah, you cannot castle before putting your pawn in the center. So yeah, I think this helps you to remember the ins and outs, and I would definitely encourage you that whenever you play a game, try to find a way for yourself to be able to memorize what you have to do in the opening. Don't play for the attack too quickly, if not all your pieces are doing well.